Good morning, everybody. I think my dog will run away while I'm setting this up. Finding the wave where we are. Oh, there we are, okay. Hello, hi, good morning. Hi, Leah, welcome back at the second part of chapter 21. If you have played Pokemon Black 2 or White 2, this is the music of the gym where I actually had to overlevel. Because I didn't have anything to deal with electric Pokemon. I kinda caught the code, so there might be some sniffing, some nose blowing. Stupid weather is terrible in Hungary. One day it's hot, the other day it's just raining. Makes a lot of sense, right? So you need to excuse me when I will not be able to make some noises. Some voices are gonna be impossible for me. But hopefully we can finish this today, before I need to go to work. Because yes, I need to go to work on Sunday as well. Because why not? But are we ready to continue where we left off? The last time it was a cliffhanger. The Orca is getting ready to meet the Phylong, which is attacking the Stardust. That is where we left off. Because I have no idea where we would get another stopping point. Team Blake and Yang going with... What was the name of the captain? I forgot about that. But they had a Sharknado. Sharknado, yeah. A shark with them. A Sharpedo with them. Named Bruce. Who should be already at the scene because it's faster than their yacht. Or than their little fishing boat. So let's see, let's find, sure, fear would work. And let's start. The yacht, Stardust, has been a beautiful luxurious vessel, over 100 feet long and gleaming in an immaculate white. It had 2 levels of cabins, a jacuzzi, and its own small dock hanging off the stern. Quint, oh yeah, and this is the yacht. It's the Gladius. And it's check for sale. Should I buy it? I don't think I have 5 million USD. I wish I had. It was rolled over 30 degrees to starboard, and beginning the process of sinking beneath the waves. Over a dozen people were clinging to whatever they could reach. More were visible through the windows of the cabin, covering in fears of the massive serpent outside. Quinn stared, eyes wide and mouth hanging open, as he saw the Phylong for the first time. It was long enough to wrap around the railroad multiple times, and had long bone spikes running down its back. There were a pair of muscular arms tipped with claws as long as a man's leg. The massive head, though, was the worst part. Heavily plated with white bone, the Phylong's tiny skull was large enough to swallow a man whole, as easily as drowning an oyster. Glowing golden eyes peered out from that mass of armor, and glowing red marks like gills marched down the length of its neck. Fangs like swords Relentless like horns, the lengths of lances. Quint shot a younger glance. Maybe you were right about needing a bigger boat. She shot him a cocky look in return. Not for so us now, old-timer. The captain's demeanor was different, and he glared at the blonde brat. He turned back to the orca's controls, his resolve bolstered by his pride. Ahead of them, Bruce had successfully drawn the Phalon's attention away from the yacht. He was maintaining a high-speed series of hit-and-run attacks, darting in too fast for the Serpentine Grim to counter, and dashing back out. A few small clouds of smoke marked where his teeth had found purchase, but they were mere drops in the bucket against a monster that size. As the shark circled around in a long arc, riding his next charge, the fellow seemed to grow tired of his assault and had a different kind of charge. A yellow glow pulsed deep in his throat, and a massive bolt of lightning shot towards the Pokémon from the Grim's mouth. The electric attack didn't lead the target enough though, and Bruce was able to avoid the worst of it. Despite that, he broke off his attack and circled further out. Blake pointed to the yacht's starboard, the side that was slowly becoming the bottom, and it continued listing. Pull up there! You can start taking people aboard while we have Bruce. Oh, that's Blake. Sorry. Pull up there. You can start taking people aboard while we can have Bruce. I don't think the orca can handle too many people on board. Fine, Quinn said, adjusting the wheel. If that ugly thing can keep those thunderbolts, Bruce might have some trouble on his own. The orca moved into position. The much taller vessel's lower deck tilted over the fishing boat side. The standard passengers and crew cheered, a few visibly sobbing with relief. Young and Blake leapt aboard the yacht. Somebody care for a taxi? Young asked brightly, giving the terrified group a dazzling smile. Now that they were aboard the Stardust, the huntresses could get a better view of the situation. The crowd was clearly of the upper crust, all of them in various forms of designer swimwear or expensive clothing. The only Pokemon visible tended to be small and fluffy varieties, clearly as frightened and panicked by the circumstances as their trainers were. And obviously none of them had water Pokemons. Blake raised her voice, speaking in smooth and level tones and trying to induce some calm. Everyone, please start working your way down to the river here and get aboard your boat. Our boat. We will get you out of here. She singled out a few men dressed in the white uniform and hired crewmen. Even you, head the others down. And you start to head count. No one gets left behind. The foolish girl obviously had no authority over them, but she knew that being given specific instructions would help dispel their terrifying paralysis. Sure enough, the crew moved into action, reassured by the presence of someone who looked like she knew what she was doing, and the passengers started carefully edging down the canted deck. She drifted up, but Blake waved him back. Stay with the orca, she said. You and Lux are going to be the last line of defense for these people if Grim goes after them. The ghost type frowned at that, but didn't argue. Blake and Young ascended the tilted post deck, climbing faster and move easily between the civilians descended. By simply leaping from the railing to the collection of couches, deck chairs, and other furnishings securely bolted into place until they reached the port side. As they crested the railing, now the highest point of the vessel, The Huntress is expected to see the Phylum continue to struggle with Bruce's hit and run tactics. Instead, they found themselves staring into Grimm's glowing eyes from only a few yards away. Its stinking breath was rushing over them like a fetid blanket. Fetid? The tremendous Grimm was large enough that a tall human could stand in its upper mouth and struggled to reach its upper jaw, and one of its eyes were bigger than Blake's whole head. There was a creeping feeling of static in the air, as a few errant sparks of electricity jumped between its teeth. The sea serpent's eyes shifted, and its gaze fell on the crowd of people at the other rear, being carefully lowered to the Orca's deck by the yacht's crew. It definitely felt the change in their personality, in their feelings. It's not just fear anymore. A yellow glow began to build in the monster's mouth. The young launched herself off the railing without hesitation. A double burst from Ember's helicopter, boosting her forward. She snatched one of the Grimm's long catfish-like barbers and swung on it like a vine, planting her boots against the scales of its neck and holding back with all of her considerable might. The Phylum's head twisted away from its target, and a destructive beam of electrical power sighed the pest across the water, drawing a huge trail of steam and lots of screams from the civilians. Blake had it Gamble showed and leapt forward herself, snagging one of the monster's horns with the weapon and swinging out to join her partner in battle. "Hurry it up already!" screamed the crowd, watching the yacht's crew help the whimpering moneybags onto his boat. "Don't know how long those guys can keep that thing busy, and I don't wanna be sitting still when it tries another shot like that." "It's going to be crowded," the yacht's captain grunted, standing next to Quint at the helm. "Your boat wasn't designed to be a ferry." "Stack these notice bastards up like cordwood if you have to. Lest they figure getting left in the water with the snakes a better prospect of getting a little cozy," Quint snapped. He raised his voice, calling the one of the crew still about the stardust. "How's the hand con coming?" "All acquainted for," the sailor called back. There were a few more people still about the larger vessel, including a hand counter, and the two burly crewmen lowering their employees to the Orca's deck. Despite the terror caused by the massive bolt of lightning that had passed overhead and blown the geyser from the ocean's surface, they had kept their duties and focused on the task at hand. Quint could respect that. The veteran fisherman scanned his vessel. Despite his words, he was not happy with how cramped every flat surface of the boat had become, with soft, useless rich forks taking up so much space. Granted, the fact that a few of them were fit for men in bikinis helped improve his mood a bit. Half dozen socialites were on the bow, clutching to whatever they could. As many as could fit were crammed into the cabin, and the rest were shoulder to shoulder and back to front in the stern. It was a good thing the sea was so calm. If there had been so much heavier waves, they would be at risk of someone getting tossed overboard with every swell. "You know those seaweeds better than me," Quint muttered to the captain. "How likely is it to panic?" "I think we're okay for that," the relatively younger man answered, his voice likewise low. The logic of yours is keeping order among the Pokemon, and the rest is using hypnosis on anybody who is on the verge of panic attack, keeping them in the cabin. "Not my logic," the Queen corrected. "The blondies. Taking off those Pokémons down there, any good in battle?" "Where is that thing?" the other captain asked incredulously. "Not at all." "That's everybody," came from the Stardust, as the last few crewmen made the descent themselves. Quint glanced at the Scaniac to confirm everyone was off with his own eyes. then spun the wheel back towards RWBY. "Everybody, hold on!" he bellowed. "It's gonna be one hell of a ride!" The captain, it occurred to Quinn that he should really learn the guy's name, checked in surprise. "Wait, what about those girls? You can't mean just to leave them." The other sailor started as he pushed the boat's engine to the limits, putting distance between it and the raging battle behind it. "They will find the experts." On the far side of the yacht, they could hear the Phylong roaring in rage and frustration, as well as the constant stream of gunfire. The massive beast reared up further out the water, its gigantic head rising into view of the sinking boat's bulk. Yang was kneeling on the monster's head, gripping a spur of the bone with one hand and repeatedly punching it with the other. Her laughter loud enough to be audible even over the engine and the screams of the crowd. A little further down, Lake was visible clinging to the Grim's neck, a blade driven into the thick scale to form a handhold, and she fired round after round into glowing red gas slits. Flint shook off his surprise quickly, resuming a mask of unimpressed composure and enjoying the way his counterpart was gaping at the battle. "See? Fine. In fact, they will be better off. Once we are far enough away, they won't need to worry about protecting us." That is true. Really good idea to move further away. This one? Yep. Yang posed in her assault on the Phylong's armored skull. She wasn't making much headway anyway. Ha! Headway! She need to remember that one. And turn back to the rocker. It was on the way back to RWBY, heavily loaded with terrified partygoers, and the Huntress felt relieved to see it go. Collateral damage was no longer a concern. She felt no worry over being left miles out at sea with the Grim. She had Blake, who was swinging from one side of the Serpent's neck to the other as she dodged the swipe from those massive claws, and Bruce, who was staring savagely at the monster's tail. They could handle this. I would love to see this Blake singing on the neck of the Phylong. Not swinging, singing. Yang paid for her lure in attention. A second later, though, as the Phylong ducked and twisted its head, dislodging her from her perch and slashing at her, apparently deciding she was an easier target than the agile folders. Cold flat-footed, Yang was fighting against the hull of the Stardust with enough force to tempt the metal. Before she could move, the Phylong slapped its massive paw against her, tremendous weight pressing her deeper into her own crater. As always, with the impact came a sudden surge of blazing power that fell into her semblance, but she had no leverage with which to use her prodigious strength, so Yang decided to try something new. It's a YouTube thing, so we are not gonna open it. Yang's eyes flashed red. She grinned, took a deep breath, and concentrated on redirecting her power, and when she opened her mouth, a massive pillar of fire burst forth. It's a fire burst. Empowered by her semblance, the flamethrower leapt across the cap of the Grim's head. A streamer of flame ran along its face and neck, throwing an outraged pain shriek from the monstrosity that managed to shatter a handful of remaining windows along the Yang's cabin. The Phylong recoiled from Yang's attack, freeing her from under its claw, and Blake took the opportunity to launch her own assault. While it was distracted, the blonde warrior rose into a crouch as she watched her partner sprint adroitly, that's a word I have never seen before, up the slope of the monster's back, and with a mighty leap, reaches the draconic head. I wanna see what that means. In a clever or skillful way. Huh. Okay, that's a new word. Blake beat with her arms for a second, as she fought to keep upright. The Phylong shaking its head furiously as hungry flames scorched its scaly flesh. She found her some balance and drew her blade. The Grim's agonized roar redoubled in volume as Grumble shouts sank deep into its eye, and the hunters were nearly deafened as the remaining few windows burst. Blake leapt off the Grim and landed lightly beside Yang on the Yang's hull, just seconds before the half-blinded Phylong dove underwater to put out the fire. There was a moment of stillness, and the only sound being the lap of waves against the hull. Think it's running away? Yang asked as she stepped out of the crater she had made. Ha! Yang being Yamchad. Do you think we are that lucky? Do you think that's lucky if it runs away? I don't think so. They countered sardonically, a little breathless from her expressions. Well, gloomy girl, we don't want it to run, so that we can kill it. So it running would be bad luck. Yang teased. Yep, literally what I said. I never thought I would hear you being so optimistic. The moment was interrupted as the Phylong burst once more from the sea on the far side of the yak, coming up over the top with an enraged roar and striking forward the girls from an unexpected angle. Experienced professionals that they were, both girls turned and realized to dodge away in an instant, but it turned out to be unnecessary. Bruce re-entered the battle in dynamic fashion, erupting from the water at top speed and leaping towards the Grim, meeting his lunge with a charge of his own. A tremendous shark shot between the girls, and in the instant of his passage, Yang could see a strange dark light gleaming on his long, serrated teeth. The sharpedo struck the Phylong just beneath its jaw, hammering it back with the full impact of his weight and velocity and closing those 5-foot-long jaws along the monster's neck. His teeth scraped against the Phylong's bone-white ventral scales, found perches, and cracked the Grim's defense with a sickening crunch. The resulting bellow of pain and rage didn't sound so deafening this time. I mean, can Grim feel pain? Good question. I still don't think they can. Yang watched Bruce to go to work, and grinned so wide her mouth hurt. Hey yeah! She cheered as she watched the shark tear the Grim, thrashing side to side and using his mask to deepen the damage. The Phylong writhed, glowing at the living bullet of teeth and tentacles, and struggling to tear him off, and damaging its paws against the shark's skin in the process. After a few seconds, the Grim's efforts, combined with Bruce's own unsupported weight, forced him to let go, and he dropped onto the act. He punched the hole through the heavily sloped and already damaged deck, leaving the Pokemon in a little artificial cave made out of the sideways room, and barely able to move for the lack of water. It was kind of a good thing the rest of Team RWBY wasn't there. Yang could hear the shark snarling as he struggled to turn around, and could only assume that Wise would not have been amused if Whisper had to been there to translate and expand her vocabulary. The Phylong roared angrily, but hesitated to attack. Its massive head twisted around, and it glared at the orca, now more than a mile away, with its remaining eye. It growled and began to turn after the fleeing trawler, leaving behind the threat in favor of prey. Oh no you don't! Yang shouted, unwilling to be ignored. She ran along the yacht's hull and picked up the boat's anchor by it dangled, holding on the winch it was attached to. She tied out the full length of chain and prepared to launch the heavy piece of metal like an athlete performing the hammer throw. Blake gave her blonde partner an amused look. Copy me now, Yang? I suppose I should be flattered. By the grim, Yang grunted, spinning in places as she brought the anchor up to speed. It's gonna be flattened. She released an impromptu projectile with the perfect timing and hooked a piece of metal arc through the air and fell out of the fellow's head just before it got too far for the chain to reach. The anchor was not one of the massive lumps of metal associated with the cartoons and sailor tattoos. It was only 100 pounds of metal designed to dig into the seabed rather than use pure mass to stop a boat. Its impact didn't phase the massive sea serpent at all. The way the anchor caught on the fellow's hooked and spurred horns, however, did make an impact, and as it reached the end of the chain, was brought up short by hundreds of tons of boat now attached to his head. The boat lurched beneath the hunter's feet as the grim jerked to a halt. Blake managed to stay upright, but Yang fell heavily onto her butt. The grim always going in shriek when they got hit. So I assume they do feel pain. Yeah, they must have. You're right. They must have fear something. What they don't feel is fear. I mean, they do feel fear from the others, but they don't fear anything other than the queen. Gotcha! Yang crowed as she leaped back to her feet. You are now like a regular fisher pro. Blake snarled. Not happy with Bruce before it comes back. I think he's stuck. Right. Wait, what's it? Yang's eyes widened as she saw the fellow turn towards the drifting wreck. A searing yellow glow was building up in his mouth. Oh crap! The dock was incredibly crowded, but the passengers, the cargo, had settled down once they got some distance from the side of the shaking yacht, so it was bearable. The handful who was freaked out to the point of nervous breakdown was sleeping it off in the cabin, courtesy of Shade's hypnosis. Lars stood on the small table in the cabin, one of the only surfaces that didn't have a human on it, with a handful of Pokemon from the Stardust. I'm curious, why the heck did they not bring that Pokemon back to the Pokeball if they don't have enough space? Right? He wasn't impressed by them. None of them were battlers by any stretch of the imagination, chosen by their trainers for being cute and stylishly fluffy, and they liked it that way. The little fire type never really understood Pokemon that didn't enjoy a good scrap. It's fine, alright! We will be back on shore soon and you will never see that thing again. Right now, you need to keep it together. Easy for you to say. Magnificently Vorpex sputtered. I've never been so scared in my life. What was that thing? This. She danced casually, floating overhead. Let's get at him. A grim, the bird corrected. Yeah, grim das. The ghost countered. You're not wrong, but stop harping. Look side, then turn back to the even more nervous Vorpix and his companions. Long story short, the ultra wormholes, portal monsters, creatures of grim, yada yada yada. Our trainers hunt them down. It's a whole thing, so don't worry. They got everything under Boom! The echo of the explosion hadn't yet faded when Luke leapt up the window, peering over the boat's stern. Some of the humans huddled out. They had screamed. Others were starting to rise and to get a better look, impeding his view, but he had seen enough. The stardust had blown up. Debris was launched skyward in the ballistic cars, and the wreckage was reduced to a few small chunks that were now sinking much faster than the whole had. More importantly, there was a tall, narrow, dark shape still visible in the distance. The Phantom was still alive, and Luke could see it turning away from the wreckage and towards the rocker before it dove beneath the surface. "Oh meu, those poor cars!" The woman gasped, horrified. "It's gonna be us! It's gonna be poor us in a second!" A man next to her shouted, his voice rising in panic. The dense cluster of humanity huddled about the rocker began to grow more restless as the implications hit home. Luke felt a cold hand cut his heart, and then he felt it harden as he forced himself to focus. He had dozens of humans on a rickety old boat and managed to go to reach the shore. He could panic over what may or may not have happened to Yang when he didn't have people depending on him. He looked up at Shade, who was still staring out the window. The amorphous ball of glasses couldn't go pale, but his horrified expression suggested that if he could, he would be white as a sheet. "Hey, pull it together!" Luke snapped. "We're up to bat!" Up to bat? Shade turned an incredulous look on the bird. "Blake and Yang, they have survived worse," Luke interrupted firmly. He wasn't certain about that, but some of the stories of his partner and her teammates had told about that time at Beacon had sounded pretty harrowing. They gave us orders, and we will obey them until they tell us otherwise, remember? Shane nodded, rolling. We had the last line of defense, he said. The faint grin managed to appear on his gangster's face. "You're going to be okay out there, where the water is? There are worse things." "Are you crazy?" Luke and Shade turned back to the cluster of Pokemon on the table. It wasn't the RWBY that had spoken up, but rather Minchino, who was stared at the battlers with panic in her eyes. "The thing is coming back, and we are in a dinky little boat this time, and we can't fight, and you're just pretending your trainers aren't?" Luke hopped back on his table and pinched the freaking chinchilla Pokemon's mouth shut with his talons. He glared at the rodent, remaining silent until she stared. "Shut up! We don't have time for you to freak out. We have work to do. And so do you." "What do you mean?" asked the Senator tremulously. "What can we do?" Luke stared at him. Which one is your trainer?" Sanded pointed at the man just outside the cabin, slammed against the bulkhead. He was scratching his head and looked like he was crying. Luke turned to RWBY. "And yours?" Fox indicated a teenage girl in the corner of the cabin, curled up on the seat and muttering what sounded like prayers under her breath as she stared out of the stern window. Luke released Minchino's mouth. "And yours?" The chinchilla stared at him nervously for a second, before pointing at the woman who was trying to comfort a younger girl, one arm over her shoulders, and starting to whisper reassurances despite being on the verge of breakdown herself. "Okay, so Minchino's trainer is the most reliable, I guess?" The rooster gave a shriek and ran for others behind them a level look. "That is your job. Hold it together, for them. If not for yourselves, we will deal with the monster. You calm down the humans. They need you. Now get over there and be fuzzy, dammit!" Without waiting for an answer, Luke hopped off the table and walked to the cabin's threshold. She drifted low, speaking quietly. "Nice one. You got away with words." The Spectre sighed. "Course, now we gotta live up to our end of the deal. Gotta liberally and toast this there. Oh, maybe we'll figure it out as we go. It's worked well so far." Quinn stared back at the distant pile of wreckage that used to be a yacht, watching as pieces of debris splashed back into water. He cursed as only a sailor could, then focused on the task at hand. He was unsure how fast the Phylum could swim, but they weren't far from the shore now. The water stepped back from the ship's wheel and grabbed the other captain's shoulder, shaking the man out of his own horrified stupor and pulling him to take Quinn's place. "Take the helm!" Quinn growled, "and keep us pointing to the beach west of the city. Hal's waiting there." Before the X-Man could argue or complain, the Orca's master slid down the ladder to the deck, narrowly avoiding landing on the man, clinging to a sentry like a security blanket. Quinn picked his way through the cluster of terrified passengers, unafraid to shove as needed. As he reached one of the tool cases built into the boat's side, opening it, he found what he was looking for. It was something he kept just in case of emergencies, or for when he was thirsty. The bottle was unlabeled and full of clear liquid that most certainly was not water. Quinn took a quick swig of the pot and brew, then unscrewed the cap to the boat's fuel tank and dumped the rest in. One of the ex-sailors watched him incredulously. "I told Tilly the mist with booze was made up for movies." "Yeah, it's bad for the engines before long," Quinn explained, "but it helps a little, and we are going to need every bit we can." He didn't get to finish the sentence as the water just off the Orca's stern roiled, and something massive rising from beneath. The Phylum had already caught up. The young bobbed in the water, surrounded by the wreckage of the Stardust. She was pretty sure she hadn't blacked out for long after the Graves lightning bolt had blown up the yacht, but she had no idea where her partner or that Tusi companion had gotten to. "Blake!" she called, paddling furiously to keep above the surface. "Bruce?" Silence, but for the sound of water slapping against the metal. "Come on, I know that wasn't enough to put you down, either of you." More silence. Young refused to admit it to herself, but she was starting to get seriously concerned. What if Blake had been hit with a chunk of yacht and knocked out? What if she had landed in the water face down? What if... There was a thought from the nearby piece of wreckage, and the slab of what had once been a hole shifted aside. Bruce nosed through the debris, and Blake was carefully patched up the huge shark's back. "There you are!" "Oh." The father's girl sighed with relief. "I was getting worried." "What about me?" Yang said, grinning to hide her own relief. "Nah, I'm taking verses in Goodwich's combat class. Now give me a hand there. I have a score to settle with that overgrown sea snake." Without thought, Finn dropped the empty bottle and seized something more useful of the tool rack. A half-rusted machete he kept around as a multi-purpose tool. The crowd of partygoers screamed in terror and scrambled madly towards the bow. Quinn stood alone at the stern, machete hanging from his hand, staring unflinching up at the titanic monstrosity that was easily keeping pace with its bow's speed. It was even more horrific than it had been when he had first seen it, covered in the evidence of furious battle. The flesh and bone armor along the right side of its massive head and neck were scorched and burned. The armor plates under its chin were badly cracked and punctured, and its left thigh was completely missing. Yet somehow it didn't appear to be hampered by its injuries at all. There was also an anchor lodged against one of its horns. For some reason, a dozen feet of chain draped over its head and dangling free. A tiny part of Quinn's mind reflected that it was amazing what little details you could pick up when you were staring death in the face. Literally death. The monster was staring at him, hate in its remaining eye. Blondie had said those things could sense fear, and it pursued, but with the inevitable in front of him, he couldn't find it himself to feel afraid. Maybe it was offended by that? Maybe it was. But it could still feel a lot of fear from the other passengers. The Phylum's mouth opened, revealing its teeth as long as the Queen's arm. And the passenger screamed anew as a yellow glow built up in his throat. Before the lightning bolt could finish charging though, a crackling ball of blackish purple energy leapt past overhead and struck the monster just below its hooded eye, bursting with concussive force and intercepting the Grimm's attack. The serpent flinched away, the glow fading as the power was released prematurely. Sparing a glance over his shoulder, Quinn could see it ghastly, already charging another shadow ball. The Torchic was running across the deck towards the stand under him. The captain turned back to the Grimm, and saw that he was already recovering from the blast of ghostly energy. With a bellow of rage, it slashed out with one of its huge clawed paws, and slashed straight through the ghastly. The spectral Pokemon shrieked as the claws passed through his substance, scattering his body like wafting smoke. The ghost's face looked pained as he pulled himself together. The Fanlong's jaws opened wide again, but rather than a yellow glow of power, Quinn could see the muscles in its massive neck tensing. The monster lunged. Behind Quinn, there was a dual trumph, and heat flushed over his back for an instant. Suddenly, the Torchic landed on his shoulder like a parrot, before maintaining his momentum and springing forward, off the sailor's shoulder, off the boat, and towards the Fanlong. The bird rolled forward in midair, and released the compact blast of Emperor that immediately burst beneath him, with enough force to propel his tiny body skyward. The tiny puff of orange feathers was in the path of the Grimm's attack, and disappeared into his cadaverous mouth. Quinn's jaw dropped. "Mother of Malafi!" he whispered. The Fanlong's lunged past, paused, and an orange glow escaped his jaws. With a shriek, it flared madly, flames erupting from its mouth as the Torchic unleashed its burning rage. As the gigantic head swung past, the sailor could see a speck of orange wedged into the gap between the two massive teeth, doing his level best to incinerate his surroundings. It will have to be Torchic's turn to level up their wolf, right? At one point after this battle. It didn't last. The Fanlong didn't seem particularly smart, but it was smart enough to identify the simplest solution. The Grimm reared back and dove under the water. Lux was willing to admit that this was not in any way, shape or form a good idea. Jumping into Fanlong's mouth and scorching it from within, that was truthfully a terrible idea. Honestly, he hadn't been thinking when he did it. Between the uncertainty of his trainer's survivor, the shriek of pain from the shade as the Grimm's claw tore his aggressors form, and the fact that it would only take one bite or blast of lightning to annihilate the ship full of innocents, Lux was charged with protecting. The little fire type wasn't really up to planning on a tactical or strategic level. He just wanted to hurt the monster that may very well have hurt his trainer before he could attack anyone else. And minor considerations like his own well-being were cast aside. He is really well-fitting for young. And there we go, one of the most badass and my favorite scenes in the chapter. It is really a badass scene. I have to remember this. I actually kind of wanna draw this scene. Let me open up a notepad, just a second. Let me save it here first. There we go. Still, his gambit had gotten more of a reaction than anything else he could have done, which was cold comfort as he felt the furlong angle itself downward, and saw the ocean getting closer rapidly through the gap of its teeth. Cold. That was the one thing Luz could feel as he was dragged beneath the waves. The freezing water hit him like a wall and drew what little air he had from his lungs. He barely managed to keep in place, wedged between the two of the grim's teeth. The cold and pressure were painful in their intensity, 1,000 times worse than the soaking he had gotten from Casey and her whooper. That felt like months ago, but had really just been a week? Had it really been so recently that he had met Young? Had it really only been 7 days since she drawn him out from under the bench, dried him off and humiliated his idiot former trainer? Had he really only had his best friend for such a short time before this monster had Lucy didn't feel cold anymore. He felt rage, and the infinite score. A fading flame burned back into life, brighter than ever before. Yep, it's time! The furlong burst from the water a few dozen meters of the orca's port bow, shaking with agony and writhing wildly. The great gouts of steam boiled from its maw, lit from within by the orange glow of raging fire, and as the searing clouds parted, the source became visible. A cumbrous skull stood in the serpent's mouth, brand new arms raised above his head, as he strained to hold his monsters open. He was surrounded by dancing flames, a fire spin whirling about him on the grill's tongue. It didn't double evolve just like Zubat. But for people who don't know, this is Combusken, right there. It's the first evolution of Torchic. I guess I will have to update the screen, right? I have to switch Torchic for Combusken next time. The screams of the humans above the orca post, and were replaced with rising cheer as they saw the brave birds still fighting desperately on their behalf. And then a few tiny motes of reddish-orange light flew past it from nowhere and slammed into Phylong's neck with a ripple of fiery blast that staggered the serpent. Someone pointed astern of the speeding boat, and the cheers redoubled. Approaching swiftly, they could see a massive blue shape knifing through the water. A pair of humanoid forms crouched atop it. Young, Blake, and Bruce had returned, ready for round 2. Is it another YouTube? Yeah, it's another YouTube thing. Yeah, I definitely cannot open that, because it has My Chemical Romance music in it. That would be instant stop. Despite its size, Bruce was still instantly fast for a fish. He shot across the waves, bouncing from cast to cast, not slowed by his passengers in the slightest. Young lowered Ember Salico, thinking it was lucky stars that the dust ammunition could work while wet. She glanced over her shoulder at Blake. Yeah, he's gonna just sing back. He might get back later, who knows? Bumblebee? She asked, and the team nodded. No more words were needed. As Bruce accelerated past the rocker, Blake leapt aboard, even as Young continued firing missiles at their adversity. The photos didn't pause for an instant, though she did shoot a relief shade, a reassuring smile. She leapt to the top of the boat's tall radio mast, scaling the narrow metal pole and perching atop with ease. With careful aim, she hurled Gumball's shoulder out over the water, over to the front of the vessel, just as Bruce passed the bow and accelerated into the hard right. The ballistic chain's side grip fell neatly into Young's hand, and the blonde's feet left a sharp into his back as she swung from her partner's line, firing her free hand's gauntlet behind her as quickly as the shells could cycle. She maintained her speed and momentum as she orbited the boat, and the last seconds she released, putting all of her strength, momentum, and mass behind a strike that shattered the Phylum's bone mask just below the remaining guy. The impact roared like thunder, even before the shotgun fired. The beast slumped momentarily, fell by the blow, but not dead yet. Yeah, this is gonna be the evolution of the Phylum, right? Young, her momentum spent, dropped like a stone, and managed to snare one of the Renegades' barbers. As she swung from the trailer like jungle vine, she heard a joyous thrill, and her eyes widened in surprise as the big mass of orange and yellow feathers leapt from the Phylum's mouth toward her, reaching out with a long taloned arm. She caught the bird's hand, staring wide-eyed at the familiar yet so very different Pokemon. Looking buff, buddy. The joyful reunion was cut short as the Grim roared, and a massive set of webbed wings unfolded from its back as the monster shot from the water and took the sky. Young and Luke still hanging from his chin, the blonde let loose on the roads on her own. Oh, come on! Captain! Griffin roared at the call, silently cursing himself for growling at the battle like the damned Syrians, cluttering his boat. He looked up at the ex-captain, still standing at the helm. We are in the shallows, much further, and we will run aground on the beach. Where's the help you were talking about? Just keep going, Quint yelled back. Don't stop for nothing. For us, she will go, then go farther. In the horseman's shocked look, Quint turned his attention to the covering people around him. Find something to hold him to, and as soon as she stopped, jump aboard and run for it. The warning was well timed. No more than 30 seconds later, the orca lurched and barked like an angry Taurus as the kill struck sandbar, nearly taking Quint off his feet before he could grab the transcom for balance. The engine snapped for a few seconds, then caught as the boat managed to plow through the obstacle. She then managed to push through the next. The orca's keel dug deep into the sand, and the engine gave out after a furious struggle. Well, he will be compensated. Go! Quint roared, and the passengers didn't need to be told twice. They splashed down into waist-deep water and started wading for their lives towards the shore, a few dozen yards away. Blake hopped down from the radio mast, landing so slightly that the certain foot drop might as well have been stepping off the curb. Her guest floated over to her, grinning like a loon. Jim Brown better be there, Quint muttered, pitching his voice too low to be heard by a flitting crowd. The beach was closed and I saw emergency vehicles waiting on the road. She will be there, the teen assured him. Then we would better get moving before the teen comes back around. Despite his words, Clint paused for a moment, hopping overboard. He looked around his beached vessel and spared a moment to sigh. Depending on how bad the engine was, or if the keel had been damaged, this might be why you end up as the orca's last cruise. Blake rested a hand on his shoulder, but didn't say a word. Clint appreciated that. The old sailor looked at her. Your friend's gonna be alright up there? He asked, jerking it down by the flying grim sucking over the water, and a pair of yellow spikes hanging over it. Oh sure, Blake says breezily. Young lives for this kind of stuff. This seriously sucks, Young yelled, still hanging from the Phylum's bubble. She at least had both hands with which to do so now. Lux had managed to seize the uncrossed chain still dangling from the Grim's head and was clinging to that instead of his trainer. The young foul Pokemon thrilled to get her attention, then pointed at the orca, started on the sandbar. The passengers were streaming towards the beach, where the flashing light of emergency services waited. I see them, Young answered, but the Phylum stooped into the dive, sweeping low over the water, towards the helpless crowd. And so does he. We gotta stop him. Luz cheeped desperately, unable to see a way to drive the monster off course into the few seconds they had. They had no leverage, no way to aim, no time to scale back up to his head. Another YouTube video. And then the water beneath them erupted, and Bruce resumed the battle once more. The massive shark shot from the water like a bullet as the Grim flew overhead, and his massive teeth found their mark in the joint of the Phylum's wing. What's more, from each puncture wound, a gleaming crust of ice formed. The frozen shell looking into the limb in place mid-flap. It's Ice Fang! Alright, Bruce! Yang cheered. Looks trailing triumphantly alongside her. The Sharpedo released his grip and fell back into the water. Damage done. Avoiding its attack on, the Phylum strained to move its frozen wing and flapped wildly with the other in an attempt to compensate, but it wasn't enough. The rib sailed over the heads of its intended targets, throwing a ballistic arc that terminated squarely in a sand dune on the beach. Yang and Lux tumbled across the sand themselves, bouncing roughly until the momentum was used up. They lay there for a long moment, just heaving as they just allowed themselves to go limp and relax. Eventually the pair managed to hold themselves upright. Yang looked at her Pokemon, taking the chances he had gone through since she had last seen him. Guess you've got a story to tell, huh? Lux answered by the way of tackling her with a hug. Yang smiled down at him, hugging him back. Yeah, I was worried about you too, buddy. Suddenly, she straightened up, a look of horror on her face. It's not fading yet. Indeed, the Phylum was still in one piece, not erupting like the slain Grim inevitably would. A second later, Yang realized what that meant. It began to move once more, pushing its body up to the ground with its clawed arms. A rumbling growl rising from the deep within. Yang and Lux scrambled to their feet, cursing. What the hell does it take to kill you? Use Rock Slide! Wait. Use Rock Slide! Steel! And if in answer to Yang's rhetorical question, Stilix thundered down upon the Grim with all of tons of weight. The impact flattened the Grim against the beach again, and a pair of serpentine creatures grappled against each other as they fought for control. Now use Stone Edge! Jasmine's voice rang out again, far more confident and militant than she had been when the hunters had met her. A tremendous Pokemon twisted and brought the massive razor-sharp arrowhead that was his tail into play. Light flashed across the blade-like edge, and it lashed against the Fylong's neck with finality. Black scales parted, and the monster's head landed on the sand yards away from his body. Both pieces immediately dissolving into smoke. It wasn't Yang or Blake who killed the thing, it was Jasmine and Steelix. Back behind the police barricades, keeping people away from the beach, the reporter turned to her cameraman. "Tell me you got that!" she demanded. The cameraman didn't turn away from the disappearing monster. A goofy grin stretched across his face. "Every second," he promised. It was getting late. The well-wishers and hope-nobbers had finally wandered off. The Stardust's owner and his friends had finished the endless streams of thanks and gratitude, and the heroes of the hour finally had some peace and quiet. They sat on the edge of the dock, the huntresses, the captains, and the gym leader, along with Lux beside them, Shade above them, and Bruce drifting in the water below them. Quint took a swig from the bottle of whiskey he had brought with him, enjoying the burn of the alcohol. "Well, I think that was one for the scrapbook. Never thought I would be hauling in something that size with my little boat." The captain of the Stardust, who it turned out was named Hooper. Another name we should know. Obviously another Jaws reference, right? Oh. He was a crew member. Quinn chuckled. Oh wait. Took a pull from his own butter. I still can't believe we are alive. Quinn chuckled. I'm still disappointed that it faded away like that. Damn shame. I know a taxidermy man wouldn't have had a heart attack if I bought him that. Yang kicked her feet aimlessly, leaning back to look up at the star-filled sky. Yeah, that's the thing about Grimm. Everyone turns into it was this big story. Yeah, except one. And that one is Grandel. Which is way more terrifying than the it was this big. They didn't have so much to say. She was still busy digging into a third box of takeaway sushi, humming in delight that the restaurant Jasmine had recommended lived up to his reputation. Jasmine took another sip of her iced tea before turning it into Quinn. Do you know if your boat can be repaired yet, Captain? The man sighed, looking out over the water. Not yet, no. The dogs only just got her off the sandbar and into one of the dry docks. We don't know for sure till they have done their work. Long as the keel is good, though, she should be fixed up fine. The soft-focused gym leader smiled warmly at him. I'm glad to hear it. Up to the side, Bruce rumbled as he hopped in place, deep in conversation with Lux. So, you are over the hole. Oh no, it's not the water thing. Taking a dive into the monster's mouth kinda puts things in perspective, Lux said. Surviving that, it sort of drove home that no, falling underwater is not instant death. I mean, I already knew that, but anyway, everything still hard too. I still hate getting wet, I'm just not afraid of the ocean like I was. Lux straightened up, staring out to the sea with a dark look on his face. But if Shay doesn't put that bucket down, I swear I will find that way to come him up. He glared upwards with a grimlet eye at the spectre above his head, and searching a container hovering next to him. Shade glanced at the payload, back at his friend. Totally worth it. There was a splash of shriek of outrage, and a lot of laughter. In later days, the footage of Payload's attack and demise, as well as shots taken from the phones and cameras some of the Stardust passengers had carried, would elevate the events of the day into local legend. The sad thing about legends, that they tended to gloss over the quiet moments between friends, that made the danger and the heroism all worthwhile. Wait, we were already live for an hour? That seemed much faster. Huh. Obviously, I'm gonna leave a like. And in the meantime, I'm gonna check how long is gonna be the next chapter. Yeah, it's a 7,000 word again, so we are not gonna start that. We can do that tomorrow. And we can talk about other stuff later. And after that, for 4 days, I will not be able to raid. But it's gonna be actually an interlude, so that's actually fine. So we can probably do chapter 22 and the interlude the next day, tomorrow. If that's okay with you. But yeah, it was a really good chapter. It was a really good chapter. A lot of things happened. Obviously, Takeshy evolved. And we had a very good scene as well, right? But at one point I wanna make into an extra picture, but not now, not now. I'm gonna soon leave. So I can't really even stay. But thank you for being here. And see you tomorrow, I guess. Bye bye. Sadly, my voice can't keep up for too much more. I was still struggling with my nose the whole time. Why? Again, sorry about the nosy voice that I had the whole time. Hopefully by tomorrow I will, my voice gets better. My nose was really stuffed the whole time. But now, I'm really leaving. Bye bye.